Hello and welcome to a YouTube first here on this channel with me, Cheesy Gids, where we look at 100 tips and tricks for you first time players in Satisfactory 1.0. The Satisfactory release is just around the corner and I am so excited to see what comes out of 1.0. And although I haven't been making any YouTube content, you can check over on Twitch. We've been very excited over there. What is that? Huh?
Holy shit, lasers!
Lasers? And although I'm not as big as your favourite Satisfactory content creators like Kibitz, Total Eclipse and Bits, I am someone who's sunk a lot of time and effort into Satisfactory. I think I started in update 3 before Trains and Fluids. God, how time has changed. Now bear in mind some of these tips may vary on release, and all footage will be compiled of Early Access Update 8, some stuff from Coffee Stain Studios, and if I have time to edit it, some 1.0 content. So without further ado, let's jump in. Prioritizing automation early is a must when you start out. If you start automating those basic resources such as iron and copper as soon as possible, this will save time later down the manufacturing line. Once you have placed the hub down, always aim to complete the milestones to unlock essential technologies. Don't stick to just one area. Exploring the map will help you find valuable resources and unlock more space for building in the long term. You can add items to your to-do list by right-clicking them in the build menu. This will allow you to track the resources you need, whilst also manually inputting any projects you have. It's surprising to see how quickly your factories grow when you unlock more tiers. Make sure to leave that fundamental space around your machines as your base continues to expand. Early on, biomass burners will be your primary power source, so keep them fueled. With 1.0, you can automatically manufacture biomass and belt it into your burners. You should also regularly check your power grid and add generators as needed to avoid any shutdowns. Very quickly, you'll familiarize yourself with production ratios to optimize your factory layout. If not, there are great tools like Satisfactory Calculator out there which can help with this manufacturing. Unlocking the object scanner early on can save valuable time. You can use it to locate specific resources like power slugs and nuts very early in the game. And the final one in this section is build vertically when space is tight. Use ramps and conveyor lifts to maximize your space. You can auto handcraft by pressing the space button, and once finished, press space again. These two really important keys whilst in build mode can change the game massively. You can press R to switch between different build modes like vertical or horizontal, or you can press E to swap between types of the same object. Alternatively, holding down these buttons will bring up a dial for you to choose from. Another thing you should be doing is holding control whilst in build mode. This will allow you to snap buildings together to get that precise alignment. You can also do this with foundations and snap them to the world grid to enable smooth connections between factories. One key that I find very useful is the N key, which allows you to search for items and recipes. You can also use it as a calculator for those tricky maths problems. I know I suffer from them. Within settings and user face options, you can change the hologram color. By default, it's set quite light, but you can change this to any color that works for you. You can access multiple hotbars by using Alt and your scroll wheel. This way you can use these to separate your categories so you can easily find them. And yes, you can also add paint swatches and blueprints to these hotbars. If you're sorting out your inventory, you can hold Control and left click to transfer all of a singular type of item to another inventory, such as a storage container. And whilst in dismantle mode, you can also hold Control to select multiple items to delete. Foundations are a fundamental part of keeping your factories clean and tidy. So make sure to place these down early because it will make expansion a lot easier in the long run. You can use logistical floors below or above your main manufacturing hall to make your factories look cleaner and more sleek. If you have any weird angles that you want to make in the game, you can upgrade barriers to walls by holding Control. This will allow for unique placements that don't snap to other walls or foundations. If you want to experiment by using curves in your build, you can use the same barrier technique but then replace the foundations and snap new ones to the wall segment. If you're looking for a clean look when transferring items and materials in and out of your factory, try to use the walls with conveyor holes in. This will allow you to organize your belts as they enter and exit buildings. Traversing through compact factories can prove to be quite difficult, so when laying out your factory, include walkway spaces, which will make navigation through your builds easier. Setting up various power sources such as coal and biomass in conjunction with each other can avoid overloading your power grid. Conveyor lifts are great for transporting your items vertically and saving that precious ground space. Remember, if you are using conveyor lifts, do use the floor holes in conjunction. This will allow you to have no limit when building the height of conveyor lifts. You should aim to unlock the blueprint designer as early as possible. This is used to create custom factory designs which you can use time and time again, and it makes decorating these larger builds much easier. You can snap water extractors to foundations or pipe supports. This will save you trying to align them manually by eye. Nodes you find are sprinkled across the map and come in 3 different varieties. Pure nodes will give you 120 items per minute, normal nodes will give you 60, and impure will give you 30. When you get the chance, upgrade your miners to Mark II and Mark III to drastically increase your resource extraction rate. Using storage and fluid containers as buffers will allow you to keep a backup supply as you build the next part of your production lines. This will help especially when trains and other forms of transport come into play. You should use overflow logic when setting up belts. This will mean any extra resources that aren't being used in your production line can be put into the awesome sink or directed to alternative storage. On the topic of storage, having a centralized location for all items that you may be building is perfect for when you need to handcraft certain materials. On the topic of storage, we have now been confirmed to have cloud storage via research of Mercerspheres, along with some other alien technology. This can be accessed anywhere in the world, but does take time to upload. Some recipes like oil will produce byproducts, and it's important to remove these from your production lines. There is an auto sort button located in your inventory if you have multiple stacks of the same items. Use this to clean up any items and see how much space you actually have left. Make sure the speed of your machines matches the speed of your inputs and outputs to avoid standstills. And finally, as we know, Fixit does not waste materials, so you can dismantle unused buildings or conveyors to reclaim 100% of your resources back. Although this world is large and beautiful, there are many hostile creatures, so make sure to be prepared. Exploring caves are a great way to find valuable resources such as power slugs, but be prepared to fight against the more hostile creatures. You can make use of ramps or jump pads to get higher vantage points to get a better view of your surroundings. This is really important for when you're planning these bigger bases that can take up a lot of space. When traversing the world, it is important to collect everything. You should pick up all plants, power slugs, and any other resources you find. They will be extremely useful when it comes to later objectives. On the topic of weapons, do not be afraid to use your Xenozapper. It is weak, but it is your only weapon to start with, and you can upgrade it pretty early on. There are places throughout the world like the swamp that are covered in poisonous gas. You can prevent taking damage by creating a gas mask early game. Now this one might sound simple, but it is actually quite easy to fall off the world. This will kill you, surprisingly enough, and there are plenty of places to walk off a cliff or a giant hole in the ground. You can use the map to mark important locations for you to come back to. You can also use a variety of icons to select things like where pure resource nodes are, or maybe places that you should avoid. On your journeys, you'll probably find hard drives in crashed drop pods, which unlock alternative recipes. In 1.0, you'll have a selection of 2 alternative recipes, but you can also re-roll this if you want something different. It's always important to keep healing items on you whilst traversing, such as nuts, berries, or even healing inhalers to recover health after a dangerous fight, especially with those hogs. You should regularly check your power consumption doesn't exceed your power production. You can do this at any power pole or fuel generator around the map as long as it's connected to the main grid. If you're too far away from any power poles or any power production machine, you can also go to the hub to monitor any spikes in power consumption. Automating fuel production is key for any factory's survival. However, with the new summer sloop use, we can now build power augmenters to give our power grid an extra little boost, despite whether or not they want to actually take over the world. On the topic of fuel production, you should probably invest in coal quite early. Coal power is more sustainable than biomass and should be your first major power upgrade. Something that's going to be very important to 1.0 is batteries and power storage. I cannot explain how many times batteries have saved my production, and you can never have enough of them. You may already know you can get power shards from power slugs early game once the MAM research has been complete. And although power shards boost production, you can quickly unbalance your power grid, so use them wisely. On the flip side, you can also underclock all of your machines to save on power and keep efficiency in your builds. In the Caterium research tree in the MAM, you can unlock power switches. These will include circuit breakers and priority groups, which will automatically shut down parts of your grid if it's overloaded, preventing complete shutdown. Until then, you can keep your power lines organized and efficient by connecting only what's necessary. In the Awesome Sync, you can also unlock wall-mounted power connectors, which will keep your factories looking clean and tidy. More about the Awesome Sync shortly. There are various ways to transport items across the map in Satisfactory. You should use conveyors for short to medium distances, trucks from medium to long distances, and trains for long to extra long distances. I ran out of distance words. In the mid-end game, you can also unlock drones, which will cut your transport time dramatically. Also, your conveyor belts can be upgraded to Mark II and Mark III, which are much faster and help reduce transport time significantly. And let's not forget about our pioneer traversing as well. In the early game, jump pads are a fun and efficient way for moving between levels in your factory, and eventually you'll be able to build a jetpack which can utilize different fuel types. However, if you want your pioneer to be faster horizontally, you can build blade runners in any equipment workshop, which will make it a lot quicker to run around. And a quick tip, if you didn't know, you can use the slide and jump function, which is far quicker than normal sprinting speed. At a certain point in the game, you'll unlock something called hypertubes, which are great for fast travel over long distances, especially between factory sections. Now, I've already discussed that trucks and trains will be unlockable, and they are unlockable earlier in 1.0, but they do require careful planning, so make sure when building factories you don't block off any major routes. Throughout your Satisfactory journey, you'll come across various rough terrains. You can use foundations to create bridges over this difficult terrain, which will make transport easier. And finally, also make sure to regularly check your transportation systems to ensure they are running smoothly without congestion. The last thing we need is trains crashing. Now, I've already mentioned that throughout the world you'll encounter hard drives with alternative recipes. You can use these to optimize your factory's efficiency. A good example of this is cast screws, which use iron ingots over iron rods, meaning that you'll be able to make these more efficiently. When constructing your factory, you can do this in modules so that sections can be easily upgraded or replaced. This also removes any burnout that you might feel on major projects. Also, don't be afraid to connect blueprints together. You can use multiple blueprints to stack factory modules together when making larger builds. If you know a certain part of your factory is going to be overclocked, then you should plan for that Make sure to remove any additional machines so you can contain the resources. When placing an item in build mode, you can use H to lock your hologram in place. You can then use the arrow keys to nudge it into your desired location. Smart splitters, although unlocked a little bit later, can be an amazing asset to your factory. They will allow you to sort resources based on type, which improve logistics thoroughly. Don't be afraid to stack refineries, foundries, or any sort of building really. Not only will this allow you to save space, it will also create efficient production lines which are easier to manage. If you plan on using lumen in the global illumination settings, you can use signs and change the settings to light up your build in unique ways and create some interesting lighting effects. One useful and often overlooked point is using load balancers. This will allow you to belt in random items per minute on multiple belts and evenly distribute them. Also be aware that some resources are quite limited. You should plan your factory to maximize the use of available resources, especially now we have the converter. More on that in a second. The space elevator is your main objective, and completing these milestones should be a priority. Don't be afraid to go big on the smaller components. You'll realize how many screws are needed in late game items. This is the same for anything aluminum based. Aluminum is a vital late game crafting material, so ensure your production is efficient. Even Satisfactory veterans are scared of this one. Once available, nuclear power is extremely efficient but requires careful management of waste. If done correctly, you can set up a system to automatically produce uranium, plutonium, and the new fixite fuel rods to sustain your power needs. Although not directly linked to the early game, we now have converters. If you're worried about limited resources, we can use the converter to convert items into something else. Setting up trains and the train lines can seem tedious, but they are very efficient. They are essential for moving items quickly across the map between distant factory sections in the late game. And don't panic if you're worried about belt speed. We now have Mark 6 belts and conveyor lists which can transport up to 1,200 items a minute. Hover packs are an invaluable tool for traversing the landscape and your factory builds. Not only can you avoid fall damage, you don't actually need any fuel as it is charged off the electrical system surrounding. You may be wondering, hey, what if we find all the power slugs in the game, but we still need to overclock our factories? Well, fear not. In Tier 9, which I understand is late game, you can now artificially make power shards in the quantum encoder. This will make sure that all your overclocking needs are met. Another important tip is don't be intimidated by other builds you see. We all start somewhere, and hey, take a look at my first ever build. Spaghetti nightmare, right? The MAM is vital for research. You can regularly research new technologies in the MAM using things around the world. These can unlock upgrades and new items for you to use throughout your playthrough. Now, I'm aware that this is a lot of information. If you are struggling with finding information about buildings, recipes, or where to acquire certain items, the wiki is an invaluable site which can answer most of your queries. Now, if you do want to build big and beautiful, we should go and visit the Awesome Sink. This will allow you to unlock lots of unique items, from building pieces to Mark II and III power poles, which are kind of essential for building those cleaner and more aesthetically pleasing factories. A new quality of life feature that's added to 1.0 is being able to swap between normal and straight mode when building conveyors. This will eliminate the need for building 90-degree belts. Throughout your playthrough, you'll find some alien artifacts such as summer sloops or Mercer spheres. These can now be used for power augmentation, cloud storage via the depot, and extra production output. You can craft explosive nobelis to destroy those stinky fart rocks which emit that poison gas we were talking about earlier. This will avoid you taking any damage in those slightly stinkier areas. Don't be afraid to try out something new in the game. You can try new layouts, designs, it's all part of the fun in discovering what works best for you. The Satisfactory community is awesome. It may not be as big as some of your other favorite games, but what is amazing, they are more than happy to discuss tips and tricks for future inspiration. At its core, Satisfactory is about creativity and problem solving. So enjoy the process of building and refining your factory in the way that you see fit. And finally, to wrap up, the most important tip of them all. If you hurt any passive mobs, such as the lizard doggo, the ray, the useless bird, or the giant giraffe tick type creature known as Bean,
I will find you.
And that wraps up this video on 100 tips and tricks for new players in Satisfactory. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, and to keep up to date with more Satisfactory content, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And it's worth noting that I will be playing Satisfactory live on my Twitch channel, an unhealthy amount during release week, so come over and say hi. Thank you so much everyone for watching, have a great day, and as always, stay cheesy.